Welcome into this week's Degrees of Science. September is Healthy Aging Month, and today we're talking about some brain healthy habits that you can do to help promote healthy aging and potentially cut down the potential risk of developing dementia. Today we're talking with Dr. Allison Reiss. She is an associate professor of medicine at NYU and is a member of the Alzheimer Foundation of America's Medical, Scientific, and Memory Screening Advisory Board. Dr. Allison Reiss, that's a long title you got there.
I guess I earned it from a lot of years of working on these things.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I guess before we get into some of these habits, help explain to people what the difference is between just regular memory loss and dementia.
So that is a tough line to judge for for most people, and it's very subtle at first. So it's sometimes hard to know. As we get older, and just even people who are overwhelmed with lots of information and busy with so much work, we can have memory lapses or moments where we're a little bit confused or maybe do some kind of silly things. So the question is always like, when does it cross over into something that is more ominous and that we want to be alerted that something's really wrong? So some of the signs are when a person loses their ability to use words properly, really misuses words, not just that word searching that you might tend to do, but applying the wrong word, using a common implement improperly or forgetting how to use like a fork or a spoon, getting lost in your own neighborhood and disoriented in your own familiar environment. It could be putting your keys in the freezer, doing something that's just not explainable easily by a lapse, and accumulating incidents like that. And certainly anything that becomes dangerous, like, leaving the oven on or leaving the burners on, things that can alert attention to the person or the family that the behavior is going beyond just a normal forgetting about things.
Let's talk about some of these habits that people can do to maybe help with something like that. So one very easy is, why is it important for folks to get out of the house and get moving around?
Adults in our society spend 80 to 90% of their time indoors. They stare at computers and they stare at screens and they stare at phones, and they're very sedentary. And we were not built to be like that. We were meant to be out in nature, to be in places that are green spaces, gardens, forests, parks, or to be in blue spaces with water, oceans, lakes, rivers. And exposure to the natural environment has so many good advantages. It's very good for your mood and reducing depression and anxiety. I mean, I think we all feel that, like when you're sitting inside like in the winter, and then you go out and you take a walk and maybe you had to push yourself, but you feel so much better because you just went outside. It's really good for your heart, which is good for your brain as well. And it increases your vitamin D production because you need sunlight to get vitamin D. It also stimulates your senses and makes you pay attention. It makes you more aware of things around you. And so you're using your brain in multiple ways at once, more complex ways. And also keeps you from sitting there, which is going to make you more likely to become obese, get metabolic syndrome, get diabetes, all the things that come with not moving.
So as some people get older, they may lose contact or not visit with people as much. Why is it important for people to stay in contact but definitely visiting more with friends and family?
So being in social interactions keeps us very much active and alert and gives us purpose in life. We're meant to do that. We're a very social species. So being around other people keeps us from being lonely. And it's an emotional support. When the brain is overwhelmed with stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, isolation, it's very bad for your thinking processes, for your health, for your adaptability in life. Also, when you're around family and friends, you tend to have healthier habits. People maybe eat better and they might go out and exercise and do more things. So there are just many things that come with being around other people.
We know vitamin D is important. What are some different ways that people can get vitamin D into their system?
So I see so much vitamin D deficiency. I think some of it was during COVID, people didn't go outside. And also older people, for reasons we're not exactly clear on, sometimes they don't absorb vitamin D as well when they eat it, or they don't convert to vitamin D in the sunlight as well. So I can't tell you how common this is. And I think a lot of doctors should be checking for it especially in older people in a routine way, because it's very important support for brain health. And it's one of the vitamins that is a little harder to get in food. So sunlight is the primary source of vitamin D, but we all put on sunscreen so we don't get skin cancer, but then you don't get the conversion to vitamin D that we need. So some of the foods that have it are fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, eggs, fortified dairy products. And I say fortified because a lot of people just think everything with milk has vitamin D. But I'm a yogurt lover, so I ate loads and loads of yogurt, and I thought I was getting vitamin D in the yogurt. But then I looked at the label on the container, and if you look, some of the yogurts have vitamin D and some of them do not. And that goes for a lot of foods that are dairy-based, so you need to check. If you're not much of a fish eater or you don't eat a lot of animal products, and certainly if you're vegan, it's really tough to get vitamin D without sunlight or supplements. And one of the few products that you can eat, a vegetable product, is mushrooms. And mushrooms exposed to ultraviolet light make a lot of vitamin D, but then you may not know if your mushrooms were exposed to light. So it's a little more challenging. So of the things, I tend to not be in favor of a lot of supplements, because I think it's good to get what you need from your food. But one of the few areas where supplements may well be justified would be for vitamin D, to take it in the pill form.
I learned a lot about vitamin D there. I didn't know, so it's very interesting. So talking about your diet and stuff like that, is there certain things you can do with what you eat that help your brain and help you age better?
So there really is, and it's not following any strict diet, because that does not work for most people. We don't want to be restricted, and we don't want to have a list of foods or be told to eat foods we don't like. So the recommendation that I think is the common sense one and works best is to eat the rainbow. In other words, eat diversity of food, eat lots of fruits and vegetables, eat things that you like, proteins if you like meat or fish or cheese, but eat lots of different foods. Foods work together in our brain and our body. And so you want to have that food combination of lots of things. And the things to avoid, which really are poisons, are those highly processed foods that are all chemicals. They're all full of salt, they're all full of sugar and fats, and they're not good. And they didn't grow in the ground, they didn't live on the land, those kinds of things that just have all these unpronounceable names. I would say that the Mediterranean or the Mind diet, which is talked about a lot, has a lot of good dietary habits, but you want to adjust the diet to fit your likes and dislikes. So you go to the grocery store, the market, get the whole unprocessed foods that you enjoy.
So there's been a lot of talk about head injuries and concussions and stuff like that here in recent media. Is there a connection between head injuries that could lead to an increased chance of getting dementia?
This is a very strong connection, and I'm seeing it very much myself. And we know in football and a lot of sports, I've actually authored some papers about traumatic brain injury or concussion that talk about we're getting better and better at diagnosing it and figuring out when someone's had a concussion. But, that kind of damage is cumulative. So we want to protect our brains. We want to keep our heads from getting banged around and traumatized. This is really important. There's different kinds of studies about this, but one thing is clear. Every time there's a traumatic brain injury or a concussion, there's an increase in the risk that the person is going to have dementia or of some kind later in life. And lots of head injury and lots of concussions increases that risk. And even what we call the subconcussive injuries, where it's not quite at the level of a concussion, but if you keep doing that, it's very bad for your brain. So wear the helmets, wear the seat belts, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself, because even if the head impact doesn't make an acute symptom that is concerning you, you can have consequences later in life that we don't even fully understand. Some of it is probably because there's little micro bleeding going on, and there's cell death going on, and there's a lot of shock to the whole brain. But it definitely is something that we want to avoid. I think we're all aware of the football players and the chronic traumatic encephalopathy that some of them have, which is, a pretty tragic thing. So we really want to avoid those head injuries and treat our brains like they're delicate and special.
So say somebody does have a concussion, they get diagnosed with it. How important is it to follow through the protocol of recovering and doing what your doctor prescribes to potentially help for that?
I think it can make a big difference in your future. I know it's hard, especially for young people, to project ahead like that they're going to want to have good, healthy brains thinking in 30 years or 40 years, but you really do want to listen to the doctor and do everything that you're told by your healthcare provider. The most important thing is not to let it happen again, like as much as possible to avoid another concussion, and especially, very close in time frame. And to do everything to make sure that you are fully recovered. I mean, it's not just even the issues of the cognition, but you don't want to be saddled with lifetime of headaches, difficulty reading. I mean, a lot of our lives are spent looking at our devices, and concussions can make it really, really hard to concentrate, to absorb information, to stare at screens, like really affect your whole quality of life. So it's very important to do everything you can do to lessen the consequences of any kind of brain trauma that you do have.
So one brain trauma that becomes more of an issue as folks get older is that risk of falling. How important is it to make sure you have a way to keep safe from that, and I guess also a way to inform people if something happens?
Well, this is a big problem with the older population. I mean, falls can lead to a very, very bad prognosis in older people, because not just the head injuries, but, bones break, hips break. We do a lot now to try to help keep people from falling. But, as people get older and they lose balance, it becomes really important to do exercises that keep your trunk strong and that keep your balance. I mean, you can really improve your balance with good physical therapy. Keep active and move the joints and the bones. Keep everything strong and stable so that you don't fall. And there are more and more things available now, technology to alert people if someone has fallen, or to alert if someone who shouldn't be doing it is getting out of bed in the middle of the night, or even to automatically turn lights on when someone gets out of bed, because a lot of falls happen in the night when people are getting up in the dark and they don't look where they're going, or they can't see. So I think that technology is one place it can really help. And avoiding falls is very important, because the consequences can be so big for some little minor thing that, like, you made a slip that took a fraction of a second.
So you've mentioned this some in some of the other tips that you've mentioned. How important is it just to keep your brain active and kind of focus on brain health when it comes to trying to limit that chance for dementia?
So what we want to have is what's called cognitive reserve, which means you keep your brain full of knowledge and activity, like filling a car with gas. So the more that your brain is active and used to functioning well and doing different things and being exposed to different things, the more reserve you have. So if you lose some, you don't notice, or it doesn't perceptibly affect your life. So you want to keep that tank full. And not just that, but I think our brains are built for that. I think curiosity is natural. People want to know new things and they get pleasure out of learning new things. And so lifelong learning and keeping that brain active and finding challenges is good for that.
Well, Dr. Reiss, I learned a lot about this, and I hope some of these habits and these tips will help people as, again, we're going through Healthy Aging Month in September. But thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
It was my pleasure, and I want to wish everybody health and happiness and keep using your brain and enjoying your life.